The second way that we are going to try to understand 4D cubes is to talk about how to build them out of lower dimensional cubes. Here is the algorithm that we can use to build a cube of any amount of dimensions that we want. What you do is you draw two copies of the lower dimension cube, one dimension lower, and then you connect all of the corresponding vertices of those two with new edges. You fill in all the empty squares with new squares. You fill in all the empty cavities with cubes, and you keep going all the way up. And then you have one single perfect brand new high dimensional cube. So a zero cube is really just a dot. That really does count in the family of cubes. It's got one vertex, no edges, no faces, no fillings, no nothing, just a vertex. You're supposed to draw a second copy of that zero cube. So now we've added a vertex, and then you're supposed to connect corresponding vertices with a line segment, so that adds an edge. And voila, you have a one cube, which is really just a line segment. Leveling up, we want to draw a 2D cube, which is just a square. Here's a copy of the 1D cube, right? Two vertices, one edge. You draw a second copy of that one cube above, which adds another two vertices and one edge. And then you're supposed to connect the corresponding vertices on top and bottom with edges, just the corresponding ones. That adds two new edges, right? And if you can see how the four edges enclose some empty area, we're going to fill that in with a new face. And so now we have a 2 cube, which is just a square, 4 vertices, 4 edges, 1 face. Let's use this to build a cube. So we have a 2D cube sitting down here at the bottom, 4 vertices, 4 edges, 1 face. You draw another copy of it above, which is another 4 vertices, another 4 edges, and 1 more face. And then we start connecting those corresponding vertices with these vertical edges. That makes 4 new edges, right? And now imagine that this is like a house, right? We have the floor and the roof, but no walls. There are these empty frames here. There's 4 of them, and we're actually going to fill them all in with new faces, and that creates 4 new faces. Now we have a totally closed off empty box, and we're going to be filling in that inside with a new 3D filling. And now you have an absolutely complete 3D cube, which is just a regular old cube. So if you followed along with all of that, let's use all of this awesome algorithmness to make a 4D cube. You are supposed to draw one copy of the 3D cube, 8 vertices, 12 edges, 6 faces, 1 filling. And then you're supposed to draw a second copy of that cube above, which doubles all of those features. And then you're supposed to connect corresponding vertices from the top cube to the bottom cube using brand new edges. And if you were counting, each of those cubes had 8 vertices, right? And so that actually adds 8 different new edges. And this was a diagram that we saw in the last video. So here we are. We have all of the edges that we need. Now what's going to come next is kind of complicated, and I can't show it to you on the screen, otherwise the picture would just look like straight garbage. But if you look at any edge from the top cube and its corresponding edge on the bottom, there will be 2 more edges, and you will see that it actually frames an empty, well, it's not quite exactly square, but we're going to call it a square area. And so we're going to add a face there, a 2D face. There are actually going to be 12 of these. You go around all of the edges of the top cube. They're all going to correspond to edges of the bottom cube. They're all going to frame an empty area, and we are going to be adding faces for all of those empty areas. That's a total of 12 new faces, which again are not in this drawing, but they are supposed to be there. We need to imagine them being there. The last step is to understand where 6 new fillings come in. This is a little tough. So what you need to do is imagine each face on the top cube will correspond to a face on the bottom cube, right? Matchy matchy. And since we filled in all of those empty areas with new faces, they are going to be surrounded by 4 new faces, which encloses a cube-shaped area. And so we have to add a filling for that. There's going to be one of these for each of the faces of the original 3D cube, and there's 6 of those. So that means 6 new 3D faces, which I'm also calling fillings. I made that word up. And so there are going to be a total of 8 3D faces in a 4D cube. The very last step, and we definitely can't show this step because we can't draw 4D stuff at all, is that all of this stuff that we did draw and describe is supposed to enclose a single 4D filling that we are supposed to add. And so that's like a 4D face. I can't represent it visually at all, but I have to understand that it's there. And so the final answer here is that we have here a 4 cube or a hypercube or a tesseract or whatever, and it's going to have 16 vertices, 32 edges, 24 faces, 8 fillings, and 1 of those crazy, mysterious 4D fillings.